Welcome back to the No Such Thing as a Fish Comic Relief Marathon. We are moving swiftly along down the road of facts.
Got an ending for that sentence there, Dan?
Strong metaphor, Dan. Strong metaphor.
Well, we'll stay tuned to find the end of that metaphor later on in the show. But until then, we are just going to quickly remind you that this whole show is in aid of comic relief, and the reason we're here is to raise money for them. You can do it in numerous ways by buying wonderful things for your face. There's t-shirts available. There are many different methods, but the method we're hoping you'll do most of all tonight, there are key rings, as James is showing. But if you could go to comicrelief.com/fish to our Just Giving page and help us pump up as much money as possible as we can make in this one broadcast. So it's time to bring on our next guest. We're very excited. It is fact number 7. And joining us now, it is actor-comedian. It's the star of Game of Thrones and the brilliant Upstart Crow, which Anna and I saw just before lockdown happened live in the West End. Yeah. She was incredible. Please welcome the wonderful Gemma Whelan.
Hi.
Woo!
Hello.
Hi, Gemma.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm so sad. I had such a beautiful setup and then the internet fell off and now I'm on my phone. So anyone who thinks I've got really sketchy setup, it was beautiful and then it fell off. But anyway, you don't need the details, Gemma. Shut up. It's charity.
It's okay. It's been technologically flawless until now. So you've really...
I'm sorry.
So we're going to kick into number 7, fact number 7, and that is Gemma Whelan.
My fact is that classical concert audiences cough twice as often as it's on my phone.
You had it.
That's it. Twice as much.
They cough twice as often as people who are not in classical concerts, apparently. We want to make that clear. This is such a great start.
Did it
generously, guys.
Why do they do it? Why do they? Is it on purpose? Is it like
There's actually a thesis about it. Someone spent a lot of time researching it, and there's many schools of thought. And one is boredom, one is group mentality, one is if you cough. Like a lot of people are nervous to cough in such a situation, and maybe when someone breaks the seal, everyone jumps on the bandwagon and coughs as well.
That's true.
Then age apparently is a factor as well. Sort of maybe older people go to those concerts.
Oh, of course, that's
so maybe
it.
That's why.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I've just remembered what classical music concerts are like whenever I go to them, and everyone's got a cough. They're all 90.
Yeah.
Yes, you are, Anna.
It's such a good paper. So I had a look at it, and it's this professor called Andreas Wagner from the University of Hanover, and the title of it is "Why Do People (not) cough in concerts?" It's very skillfully presented, and it's exactly that. Yeah, people cough more when music is complex and unfamiliar. So it's as though it's a kind of subtle way of protesting at being made to listen to like tricky stuff.
Yeah.
But then don't you think, I think sometimes if I'm ever watching someone doing something tricky, I don't want to put them off. So I don't cough.
Yeah.
Well, that's because you're nice, Gemma, but these people...
Old people are horrible is what you're saying.
No, there's only so long you can hold it in, though, isn't it? Like, I remember going to... Yeah. Well, we've been going 6 hours so far. Do our best. There was one thing, it was attention-seeking. He said it might be.
Yeah.
And then the other thing... Yeah. And the other thing is that, like, this thing of one person coughing and everyone going for it, he called that a coughing avalanche.
Yes.
Nice. I thought that there was a lot of vitriol online about this, coming from sort of performers. This is, I'm sure you're not among them, Gemma, but people assuming that everyone's coughing intentionally. And in my experience, it's absolute hell when you need to cough in like assembly or the theatre and you feel dreadful. But I think it comes on almost subconsciously. I was buying into the much more generous interpretation from 1909 in Variety. So this has been a phenomenon forever, people getting annoyed at everyone coughing in the theatre. 1909 in Variety, it claimed that a French scientist had said the reason people cough more in the theatre than elsewhere is that when the ear is extended in order to better catch the words, the throat becomes irritated. It's the extending of the ear that provokes the throat.
Wow, I was almost paying too much attention.
I didn't realise that was a thing. Because if you go too far, your head's going to come in between the people in front of you, isn't it? And you can claim, sorry, I'm just so interested. I can't help myself, as opposed to being Curvy Dan.
Yeah, but Dan, you shouldn't have done it with those little binoculars, really.
I do really like the theory that it's tax avoidance, and this is it's the idea that being at a concert is not fun in lots of ways. Obviously, the music is fabulous, but there are lots of ways in which it's quite hard. You know, the seats are hard and often not very comfortable. You're not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to lean over and say, "Oh, I love this bit coming up," or whatever. And you have to suppress so much of what it's like being a person. So the tax avoidance thing is that coughing is a way of behaving that is kind of allowed. It's slightly frowned on, but you're allowed to do it. You're definitely not allowed to shout or stand up.
Isn't it?
It's some expression, so it all gets channeled into the cough, basically. And so this is why it happens. That's one other idea.
So, Gemma, do you notice it a lot when you're on stage? Like when you were doing Upstart Crow, do you?
Well, Upstart Crow was sort of happening as the pandemic was beginning to trickle in. So it was actually pin drop silent most of the time, apart from the uproarious laughter, of course. But whenever someone did cough, it was really, we were alarmed on stage, and it didn't happen very often because, yeah. And also, I did notice there was the odd cough, but in the very quiet bits, we did this little bit of Othello. No one coughed because I'm not sure they trusted us to get it right. So they were all waiting for us to go wrong.
Oh,
sometimes there's some sort of glee and so anyway, that was it's not the best example I think of it. But when I was doing One Man Two Governors, we really complained at the coughing, particularly in matinees. But again, that might serve the age argument, mightn't it?
Yeah.
So,
do you find that, are you good at not letting it put you off your stride, or do you stop and sort of start throwing things at the culprit?
But, actually, it was during another show I was doing. It was just a two-hander, and it was a lot of concentration because it was Pinter, so it was a lot of sort of non sequiturs, and it was just me speaking at that point for quite a long time, and someone in the front row actually had a proper sort of consumption fit, I would say, and I couldn't stop. When you just can't stop, and it was sort of alarming and worrying. But everyone ignored this poor woman, and she sank down in her seat, and then eventually managed to get out, but like properly bringing up her lungs, and that was quite difficult to concentrate through. I think it was for everyone. Yeah.
Is there a secret sort of emergency move you pull in theatre when the character, when like you can give each other the eyes and go, we're going to have to break the fourth wall here, and just all pretend to do, I've just got to get something, let's meet back here in 1 minute kind of thing.
What you're meant to do is just carry on, and if the stage manager comes on stage and does a show stop, that's the only time you're allowed to stop.
Right. Okay.
Unless you feel like you're in danger, obviously. But largely, you've just got to keep going, and then if someone tells you to stop, as long as it's not the audience, that wouldn't be very nice. But stage manager.
Although, so Julian Fellows was apparently in the audience last year, the year before, and someone was coughing in front of him, and he got so annoyed about it. You can imagine he's the kind of person who gets annoyed about people coughing in audiences. But I think he might have stood up. He shouted in the middle of the play, "You must stop coughing!" Which
Brilliant.
I would have thought is more distracting for
Thanks,
the actor.
Julian. Yeah.
That would be very off-putting.
Thanks, mate.
Conversely, I went to see Johnny Flynn in a play once, and he had to sit down, sort of downstage front, and he was monologuing, and he was eating bread, and he choked on the bread, and he was coughing and coughing and coughing, but he just sort of, in character, asked the audience for a bottle of water. Someone handed him some.
Oh, great.
Nice.
Wow.
And they carried on, and we loved him for it.
Great move.
So, that was a great move. Obviously,
That's
it's the
great.
reverse, but like dealing with it in character would be a really smart and fantastic thing to do. But most of us haven't got the nous or the balls.
I saw Johnny's brother, Jerome Flynn, in the West End playing Tommy Cooper in a play called Just like that. And it was the biopic of it. And it was me sitting on my own. It was my first ever trip to London, and I bought tickets to see it.
You weren't
and
the only one in the audience?
No, it was, to be fair, it was a matinee and it was a small audience.
Okay.
So I was sat next to, we all had different seats and they all brought us together. So I ended up sitting next to this American woman who was
pissing herself at all of these Tommy Cooper jokes, not realizing that it's Jerome Flynn who was playing him. She thought he was real, and she kept saying,
"This guy is amazing. We got to get him over to America. Why have we not heard of Tommy?" I was like,
Oh, wow.
"You're gonna have a big surprise at the end of this play."
It's great. Yeah. I do like that when people become very vocal. It's very rare, but occasionally you get someone incredibly vocal expressing their love or hatred for something. And I think that's quite exciting to watch, especially if the play's a bit boring.
We once had a thing at Ostentatious. We had a thing that the first Fringe we did as Ostentatious.
Explain that quickly, Andy, for all the listeners who might.
Improvised comedy based on Jane Austen.
Everyone knows that.
Oh yeah, global behemoth.
No, I meant what the Edinburgh Fringe is. Everyone knows Ostentatious.
The Edinburgh Fringe used to be a thing that happened every August. And what happened was it was the first time we had a reviewer in from anywhere. And it was a reviewer from Chortle, which is the big comedy website. And obviously, if you're your first time at the Fringe, this is a pretty big deal. And the boyfriend of one of the members of Ostentatious was in the audience and started choking so much he might die, because he had a thing where if you swallow a tiny bit of spit or whatever, tiny bit of saliva just goes down the wrong way. And unfortunately, we had crammed the venue so full of audience that there was no way for him to leave without causing enormous disruption. And he literally had to plow through an entire row of audience and destroy the whole thing. And so, but he was fine at the end. And the member whose boyfriend it was sort of went off because she knew about his condition, and so did Kerriad. And Kerriad had to come back on in the next scene and say, in character, "Oh yes, you remember that thing we were talking about? He's fine. He's absolutely fine." And there was such tension in the room because he clearly was really in a bad way. And yeah.
And what? So she was doing it to reassure everyone.
Yeah, the room was really tense until she came back on and said, "It is all fine now." And then everyone calmed down, and yeah.
You've got to incorporate it. I remember my dad telling me, and we can actually ask him later if this happened. My dad telling me that Eddie Izzard once was doing one of his shows and a button fell off, and he said sort of offhand, "Does anyone in the audience have a needle and thread?" And someone did, and chucked it on stage, and he sewed the button back on while he was performing. How cool is that? Onto his own suit. I mean,
that is cool.
That's amazing.
Do any number of those things. But I think so. Here's what I think should be brought back for actors. This is something that an actor called John Barrymore did, who was acting in the 20s and 30s. He got so annoyed with people coughing during his shows that he, during one show at the interval, he sent for a large fish. And he reappeared on stage in the second half. I don't know whether he incorporated this into his character or just did it, but he basically chucked the large fish onto the front row and said, "Busy yourselves with that, you damned walruses, and let the rest of us get on with the play."
Wow. Oh my God.
That's the way of handling it.
Yeah. There was a guy in 2015 on Broadway who halfway through a show called The Hand of God got up on stage and plugged his mobile phone into a plug on the side of the stage. And then went to sit back down again. And then they obviously, the bouncers were like, "What the hell are you doing?" Went up and took his phone and gave it to him and kind of quietly admonished him. And he went, "Where am I supposed to plug it in then?"
Wow.
That's bullshit, isn't it?
It's like people who put their bags and coats or shoes or feet on the edge of the stage.
Oh, yeah.
Do they do that?
Yeah. If particularly in some smaller venues, you'll end up with like a coat or a bag or feet or something.
Wow.
That's so weird.
You're crossing into another dimension there. You can't do that.
And so, Gemma, you're one of the purists who thinks that shouldn't happen. That's what I'm getting from you there?
Yeah. You can pop your feet up.
Lenny Henry, co-founder of Comic Relief, he used to, in his shows, I would see him do a line where he would sort of say, he'd go to the guy who was sitting front row and go, "Are you in show business?" And they would say, "No." And he goes, "Then get your fucking foot off my stage." in a much nicer way than I did it. I don't know why I did it so aggressively. In a very sweet kind of, get your foot off my stage.
I thought, as you said that, I thought, definitely can't imagine Lenny Henry using that tone of voice ever.
Lenny's tone in his stand-up. Boy, you fucks. Yeah. No, he's a very nice man. Apologies, co-founder of the thing we're raising money for.
No, fair reaction. But I think that we're also in the olden days, people were just louder, right? Until the turn of the 20th century, audiences were a massively raucous bunch. And, they'd be
supposed to be part of it, weren't they?
Yeah. Shakespearean audiences. And even at classical music concerts. What show was it where there was a proper riot? It was the Rite of Spring, wasn't it? Where there was famously a big riot in the theatre because they were so offended by the music and thought it was too modern and edgy, which I think we all still feel about the Rite of Spring.
I'm very unhappy with it still.
Those dissonant chords. Oh,
do you guys know when booing was invented?
Ooh.
No. Oh God. Well, I remember when you were on stage at Edinburgh that time.
My first Fringe show. Yeah. That's when it was perfected.
It must be like ancient Greece or Rome or something.
1833.
No,
it's way more recent. So the first use of the boo, people shouting boo to mean we don't like this play, is from 1833. It was a word before that, but it was if you were doing an imitation of a cow.
Right.
Oh, so it's like moo.
Yeah, it was.
What about ghost?
Oh, I don't know about the ghost.
Yeah, what about ghost cow?
I don't know.
Well, so what did they do before that? Did they hiss or?
I think they whistled and I think they hissed. And maybe they just shouted sometimes as well.
It'd be horrible to be hissed at. I'd much rather be booed than hissed at, I think. I'd rather neither, but
Well, that was about the same time that you used to be able to hire people to go into the audience to have a reaction to a play. So this was in Paris.
Rent a crowd.
It was rent a crowd, but rent a rowdy crowd. Like the 1820s, I think in Paris there was like a proper union of claqueurs. There were people who were hired out to playwrights to sit in the audience and basically cheer and laugh and cry and do all that at the right moments. And they were divided into groups. So the rieurs, the laughers, the pleureuses, the criers. But if they didn't get asked and paid by the playwright to come to the show, then they would turn up and boo and hiss and ruin the show.
Wow.
They had this hold. They were sort of gangsters of Paris. You had to get them in your shows.
Wow.
Weird.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Nice job, though. Sit there.
Yeah.
It's very specialised to be either a laugher or a crier. You'd think that someone could just about do both.
Do you think you had to audition?
Yeah. I'm sorry you didn't get the job.
The guy auditioning you sits on stage and you sit in the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember
very meta.
Remember we did that fact ages ago on Fish about William Mcgonagall, so the terrible Scottish poet said to be the worst poet ever. And when he used to do poetry readings, it was so bad that people used to throw food at him and they would boo him and so on. And that was a problem. But then he got approached by a circus who hired him to do poetry readings, but under the condition that the audience were actively allowed to pelt him with eggs as he was reading. And he said yes. He went okay, and he was paid 15 shillings per performance. And
it's hard to get work as actors. I think any actor will tell you
that. On stage, yeah.
Yeah.
Would you draw the line at eggs, Gemma? Would you be pelted by an egg or two?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind.
Surely in one's younger days.
It might go viral or something. Worth the chance.
Anything to get back in a theatre at the moment.
Yeah.
I know.
So Ralph Richardson, what was a grandee, once he stopped to play mid-performance and he walked to the front. He was a grand old man of the theatre, and he shouted to the audience who were all watching him, "Is there a doctor in the house?" And a voice came back saying, "Oh, yes, I'm a doctor." And he said, "Doctor, isn't this an awful play?"
What did the doctor say?
I don't know.
That's too good. That's so fun.
So Molière, famous, of course, writer, 17th century writer, wrote Tartuffe. which actually I think was the other last thing I went to see in the West End, which was excellent. But he had a very bad cough because he had terrible TB a lot of the time, and
that really gives you a tickly throat, doesn't it?
It's a little bit of a scratch. So he would incorporate that into his act. He acted as well in the plays that he wrote, but apparently the descriptions of it are so graphic because he had bad TB. He would be coughing and choking and ejecting fountains of blood up the stage curtains, apparently. And
the first 3 rows you will get wet.
Molier's very good tonight, isn't he?
But he did, in fact, eventually die on stage doing that very thing, playing, so ironically, a hypochondriac in one of his plays, Le Malade Imaginaire, as in the imaginary illness, proving, in fact, that his was definitely unimaginary. Coughed a fountain of blood up the stage curtains and died. So I'm just saying, let's be a bit sympathetic to the coughers. Yeah. It's okay, guys. It was 1673.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really loud though, wasn't it, in the olden days? And what I really like is those masks they used to wear. This was in ancient Greece, but you would get a big mask and it would have a massive mouth in it, and you can still see them. And what it would do is it would just project your voice across the whole of the theatre. And you needed it because people would be talking or whatever, and you'd need to get no mics or anything like that in those days.
Wow.
Really? I just think we should definitely bring those back, right?
That's very cool.
Massive kind of.
Can you get much sort of emotion out of the face of the actor? Is it largely in the eyes, I'm guessing?
It's so far. There's such big theatres that you're so far away normally.
You'd have to do it with your gestures, I guess.
But it's a lot. I mean, if you're not paying for the prime seats in theatre anyway, you're not getting a whole lot, are you? Well, is this something you're aware of on stage when you know that the person who's paid for the really cheap seats up top, basically you're a tiny little dot to them? Is it like
on their phone? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then, what if you didn't? Did you know that they had these things on, or would you be in the back going, "That guy's mouth is massive. What is up with that mouth?"
That was speaking of phones. What was it? Madonna was on her phone, wasn't she, during one of the previews of Hamilton?
Oh, yeah.
And apparently everyone in the cast could see. All you could see was Madonna's face shining up from this phone. And Lin-Manuel Miranda supposedly banned her from coming ever again. And I think he might have denied that, maybe.
But no one dared to tell her at the time.
No. But I mean, that must be one of the worst things, Gemma, right? Like the light of a mobile phone must be the worst.
Yes, absolutely. Or people trying to film it. There's nothing you can do. You're so vulnerable, and you can't do anything about it. People are filming it. I mean, largely the ushers are very good at sort of catching it, but it's not great seeing people's faces lit up.
What are they filming it for? Are they thinking, I don't really enjoy the theatre, that great live experience, but what I do like is very grainy, quite crap, badly lit footage on my phone at 3 a.m.
For their special collection.
Yeah.
No.
No, don't say that.
I don't know. I always wonder that. Like, surely live is the best thing you can see, and then people go out on NT live if it's filmed. That's enough. But
yeah.
Well, a number of times you've been at a gig and like they're filming, people in front of you are filming, and they're all taller than you anyway, so you can just watch the whole thing on their phones.
Yeah,
it's kind of useful.
Yeah.
So not many people confess to it, though. That's the thing. There was a survey for What's on Stage, the theatre website, of people who go to the theatre, and 3% said they had used their phone during a show, which is, pretty few. I mean, it's enough to be disruptive, obviously, but 26% have fallen asleep, which is way higher.
I've fallen asleep at the theatre before.
On stage?
On stage.
In what? Go on. You offend whoever's listening.
Yeah, name names.
There's an actor watching.
It was a theatre in London. I'm too scared. I want to be liked and work.
You're not even going to name the venue.
I was at the back, on the back row, and it's very warm, and it was very boring, and I had a lovely snooze.
Oh.
And
it's a good place for
I hadn't missed much.
Okay, this does narrow it down. We can figure it out.
It's that Johnny Flynn play, isn't it? Okay. Sorry, Johnny. Should have seen Jerome.
Wow.
But 13% of people in this survey, just the only other finding there was, said they had taken their shoes and socks off. Which I think is instant lifetime ban territory.
Yeah.
Did they put him in the cloakroom? Or
No. Just cut them out.
My auntie went to the theatre once, and someone opened a bag of chips, like fish and chip chips, up next to her.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, crisps is okay, but fish and chips. She opened this bag of chips and just got on with her chips.
Oh
Amazing.
my God, that would just make me hungry.
Is that salt and vinegar as well? Because that accounts for a lot of the smell is the vinegar. If you don't like the vinegar, maybe it's okay.
I don't know. She wasn't that specific. She was just appalled.
Yeah. You've got to say, again, my dad always had a strong line in saying, and I think you should start, not you, Gemma, while you're on stage, but the rest of us have a responsibility to the actors to lean over and say, could you shut the F up?
Yeah. You know what I also found interesting in that thesis was that cinema goers very rarely cough.
Yes, weird.
Well, it's so interesting, isn't it? Movies, you know.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why, but maybe
bizarre.
as you went, going back to what you were saying, Andy, like I guess we are more free to move around, we're more comfortable, we've maybe got a drink. It's not as restrictive, so maybe maybe it really is about being restricted and old.
I think cinema probably as well is you're bombarded with soundtrack, with noises, and then there are quiet bits, and you probably just have a bit more time to negotiate your breaks for coughs in a way that maybe in the theatre you're just like, well, there's no point holding it in.
It depends what film you're watching, Dan. There are some quiet films. Not every film is Pacific Rim.
Well, if there are, I don't know that they exist. That's all I see. Gemma, we're going to have to wrap up in a second.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you all so much. I'm sorry for my technical difficulties, but it's been such fun. I hope you've been able to hear me okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and thank you for everyone who's been donating while we've been going. We're just under £45,000 now.
Wow.
We're at 44,268. Thank you everyone who continues to give us money. And if you're watching now and you haven't yet, please do give us some if you can. Only if you can. But if you can, we would so appreciate it. It will go to such good causes. We're going to take a break now. Gemma, thank you so much for joining us. And when we come back, we will be joined with one of the great quiz hosts out there. It's Mr. Richard Osman. See you in a sec.
Hi everyone, well I have just woken up 2 days after we did that Comic Relief 20-hour marathon. I really hope you enjoyed the video that you just watched. There's plenty more where that came from, so do watch them all. But in doing so, we have a deal. You watch the videos, you also have to pay. So go to comicrelief.com/fish. The link is just down there. And please give us anything you can afford, because all the money that you can send us will be given to amazing causes. Please, please do donate now.